Zach has cracked the code, the acronym. Do not try running without your pants. That's the acronym. It's a good guess, but that is actually not what it is. I have very purposefully withheld the title of the class, and I will continue to withhold the ultimate subject of the class until midway through this morning. By the way, if you haven't met our visitor over here, I guess, what's your name, sir? It looks so different this morning. Is it just a little Tony Stark you got going on? Yeah, it looks good. It looks good on you. Yeah. All right, so I won't divulge the exact nature of the focus of this class until a bit later, until I build some groundwork. I want to build some groundwork before we get there to try to elevate the importance of what it actually is that we're going to be discussing, because I don't want it to get dismissed. I don't want it to to get an eye roll or anything like that. So I want to lay a little foundational work, a little groundwork before we get there. I will say Kenny is recording this for us so that if you miss out and you really want to hear what some of these other classes are, you'll have the opportunity for that. Also, we have our teenagers in here with us for the first 4 weeks, and then they'll go back for their regular class. I will continue another 4 weeks with just the parents with some more conversation about our subject. I got a lot to cover this morning, so I probably will move kind of fast. I don't typically like having classes that don't have much discussion, but there's just a lot that I need to talk through this morning, so to get through it. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so to begin to lay the groundwork, I guess a 30,000-foot view, the big picture, is to think about addiction. Think about addiction. One question, when you think about the word addiction, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Addiction to, all right, drugs, or we might call them substances. When we think about addiction, normally substances are the number one thing that we think about. We've got drugs, alcohol, smoking, vaping. There's all these kinds of things that we consider these are what addictions are. But there is more than just one kind of addiction to substances. There are also behavioral addictions. So there are physical addictions to substances, and there are also behavioral addictions. And as we're going to see as we kind of progress through these first 4 weeks, the symptoms and what is happening to your body is identical. Withdrawals, the physical things that are happening to your body have identical markers, whether it's cocaine or whether it's, food. Whatever it is that you find you're addicted to, whether it's physical substance or whether it's a behavioral substance like overspending or going shopping, the markers are the same, which is kind of fascinating to me. All right, so because this is also a class that is a Bible class, I wanted to spend some time laying the groundwork for not only do we have a general understanding that addiction is bad, but it's also spiritually harmful as well. So here's what I want us to spend a few minutes thinking about this morning. That addiction equals idolatry. Idolatry is bad, right? Can we all agree? Idolatry is bad, addiction is bad. I want to show how we can think about them in the same way. And first, we need to begin with some terms. So here is a clinical definition of addiction. It is a compulsive, chronic, physiological, or psychological need for a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity having harmful physical, psychological, or social effects, typically causing well-defined symptoms such as anxiety, irritability, tremors, or nausea upon withdrawal or abstinence. So let's think about some of these terms, break some of these terms down individually. Compulsive or chronic. This has to do with, on one hand, frequency. it is a chronic issue that you have. It's not like something that you do once every blue moon. It is a chronic problem. It is something that is occurring with great frequency. The compulsion part is it's something that is happening with great frequency that you aren't necessarily choosing consciously. Does that make sense? So it is a subconscious need or desire or reaction or move towards whatever it is that you are addicted to. All right? So it's happening with great frequency and often without your control. It's something that you have to do, you have to have, you have to need. The second part of this definition, physiological or psychological need. So it is a need that you have, an itch you have to scratch. Either it's physiological, meaning your body is reacting to its absence. If you're struggle with alcohol, your body starts to go into shutdown, or it's any kind of physical drug like that. Your body reacts to it. What we find is that behavioral problems produce the same kind of physiological changes in your body. The chemical makeup of your body shifts to where it needs to engage in a particular behavior in order to feel stabilized or satisfied. It's also psychological. It's happening in your head too, right? Not only does your body need it, but your mind needs it as well. To feel emotionally stable, to feel like you're in control or on top of things. All right, so it's compulsive, it's chronic, it creates changes in your body. The third part of this, it can involve a habit-forming substance, behavior, or activity. Substances we get. Substances are pretty easy. We can kind of identify all the different substances that you can become addicted to. The behavior ones or the activities are a little bit harder to sometimes get your head around. Things like compulsive eating, when you're feeling anxious or nervous and what you do to make yourself feel better is to eat. It can be shopping. Shopping is an addiction. There are people who rack up thousands upon thousands, if not millions of dollars a year, because whenever something is happening in their life, they have a chronic compulsive need to go alleviate their anxiety through shopping. There are so many other. Gambling is one of those. Gambling is a behavioral addiction that we can have. So it can not only be a substance, but it also can be an activity. And these things have harmful effects. What are the effects? They can be physical, psychological, or social. Physical is actual literal withdrawals that you can have when you prevent yourself from engaging in whatever activity or engaging with whatever substance that you're addicted to. Psychological, you can begin to have anxiety and irritability, but social as well. When you can see that not engaging in whatever it is that you're addicted to causes problems with your friends, with your family, you begin to see it fracturing the relationships around you. These things happen when you are withdrawing or abstaining from the addictive behavior or substance. So whenever you prevent yourself from engaging in the activity or behavior or prevent yourself from engaging with the substance, you find yourself having some of these impacts to your system, to your body, to your mind. Okay, everybody tracking so far? All right. So that is a very comprehensive definition of addiction, what it does to you, what's happening when you do it. So how do we get from addiction to idolatry? All right, so let's switch to thinking about idolatry for a minute. If you had to just give a basic answer to what idolatry is, what would you say? How would you define it?
Worship of something other than God.
Okay, a worship of something other than God. It's like you looked at my slide here. The worship of a physical object as God, a moderate attachment or devotion to something. Not something, but something, whether it's a physical object or if it's a type of behavior. So idolatry is worship. So we need to also think about what we mean by worship. Typically, we tend to think of worship as the thing that happens over there in that room. That is a tiniest fraction of what worship is. It's corporate worship, to be sure. But the idea of biblical worship, or worship as we need to really think about it, is more than just what's happening in there, but it is to regard something, or to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. Extravagant respect or admiration for or devotion to an object of esteem. All right, so that is a more expanded version of what we mean when we talk about worship. We can say, I don't have a problem with idolatry because when I worship, I'm doing it in there where I'm supposed to. But worship, truly understood, expands to what do you spend the most of your time engaging in? What do you have an extravagant respect or devotion for? What are you engaging with the most? What is a thing or a person or something in your life that has a high seat in your priority? So worship is more than just what's going on in there. It is what you are devoted to. That's why we can say that addiction equals worship of X. Addiction, this compulsive, chronic need to engage with something, is worshiping something. Whatever it is that you're addicted to, whether it's behavior or substance, you are devoted to it. You have an immoderate attachment to it. You are spending the majority of your time focused on it, thinking about it, engaged with it. It's demanding a lot of your time, a lot of your attention. So addiction is the worship of X, which means addiction is idolatry. I think addiction and idolatry, they're a little bit like, no one wakes up and decides you want to be addicted to something, right? It's like dating someone who is really bad for you, and you didn't go out and look for someone who was really bad for you. You just develop a relationship and it becomes toxic and bad, and it takes another person pointing out, this is a really bad thing that you're doing, a bad thing that you're engaged in. This is a little bit how addiction and idolatry works. You don't wake up one day and say, you know what, I really want to engage in idolatry. I'm going to find something that I'm just going to worship. It happens like the frog in a pot, right? If you threw it in a hot water, it would immediately jump out, but you know the old thing, right? You turn it up gradually, and eventually it's just boiling alive. That's what happens with addiction and idolatry. You don't wake up deciding that you want to become an addict, that you're going to become an idolater. It's just you begin engaging in either a substance or a behavior until one day you wake up and it is your whole life. It is the thing that if taken away, it would ruin your life. It would ruin how you feel. Edward Welch, he has a PhD in philosophy and neuropsychology. He actually says this: a worship disorder, addiction is a worship disorder. Idolatry includes anything we worship: the lust for pleasure, respect, love, power, control, or freedom from pain. Furthermore, the problem is not outside of us, located in a liquor store or on the internet. The problem is within us. Alcohol and drugs are essentially satisfiers of deeper idols. The problem is not with the idolatrous substance. It is the false worship of the heart. I couldn't say it any better than that. So, if addiction is idolatry, what does the Bible have to say about idolatry? So we're going to look very briefly at two passages here. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to start in 1 Corinthians, and then we're going to look at Matthew chapter 6. And we've got like 20 minutes left before the first bell rings. So by no means, we'll come back to these passages probably a few different times over the course of the series. So we don't have time to really dive into these as much as I would like to. I just want to very briefly get the sense of what's happening here. So Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and really let's just pick up here in verse 7. We'll read from 7 down to 14. And I I want you to notice what he is including in his definition of idolatry. These are just a few places where we can get at this idea. He is referencing a time in Israel's life during the Exodus with the golden calf and all of that stuff. But notice what he says. So in verse 7 and verse 14, he has the mention of idolatry and not to be idolaters. Whenever you see something like this, when you're reading the New Testament, where you have an idea and another idea that are saying the same thing, it's helpful to look in between those two things to get a sense of what the writer means by idolatry or means by whatever that subject is. We call it a frame or an inclusio. So he says, "Do not be idolaters, as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play." He doesn't mention anything about the calves or any of that. What is he claiming to be behaviors of idolatry? It is written, the people did what? They sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. There is something about the behaviors of the people during that time that he considers idolatrous, because they are not worshiping God, they are worshiping themselves and their own pleasure. They are not eating and drinking for God or to produce inside themselves a commitment or a dedication or gratitude to God. They are living a life that is only designed to honor or please themselves. These things took place as an example for us, that we might not desire to do the kinds of evil that they did. We must not indulge in a sexual immorality, as some of them did, 23,000 who fell on that day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents, or grumble, as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer. These things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages have come. Therefore, let anyone thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation he will also provide a way of escape that you can endure it. Therefore, flee from idolatry. So he is defining or understanding idolatry. He's not mentioning the golden calves at all. That was a huge part, right? But he's mentioning the behaviors of the people, the things that they were committing themselves to, the things that they were allowing themselves to be overrun by. Their own desires, sexual immorality, eating, drinking, playing. In other words, living a life not in worship of or dedicated to God, but in worship of or dedicated to themselves and whatever they needed, whatever they wanted. All right, now flip over to Matthew. Matthew chapter 6, smack in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. Again, this is something that we could spend a lot of time talking about, but we don't have all of that time to talk about it. And you can go back and listen to the sermon that I preached on this close to when I first moved here. All right, starting in verse 19 through 24. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth or rust destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. All right, what's the distinction he's drawing here about treasure? And what is treasure?
The real treasure is in heaven versus something you put in safe.
All right, so the real treasure are the things that we are doing for the kingdom of God. The treasures that are going to just fall apart and fall away are anything that we might devote ourselves to here. Yeah, so treasure is something you value highly. In other words, something you are devoted to, something you pay attention to, something you love, something you cherish. What he's saying is, don't have as the ultimate object of your cherishing a thing that can be taken away or destroyed, a thing that can destroy you, a thing that is here based in earthly things. Instead, make the thing you ultimately cherish, devote yourself to, things that are of God, God Himself. Where your treasure is, verse 21, is where your heart will be. The ancients thought of the heart as like the core of who you are. It's what makes you you. So where your treasure is, what you value, what you devote yourself to, what you're ultimately attached to, is going to shape the core of who you are. The behaviors that you engage in are doing something to you. And then he uses this metaphor that we often don't understand, because we don't really understand how they thought about the eye. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is healthy, your body is full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body is full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? All right, so this metaphor, the way they understood the light, it was the lamp of illumination. Whatever you looked at, you were illuminating, and whatever you were illuminating allowed a window into who you are. So Jesus is ultimately saying, whatever you look at, whatever you pay attention to, whatever you are devoting yourself to is doing something back to you. It is shaping who you are. So if my eye is good, meaning I am devoted to, paying attention to, engaging in good things, I will be formed and transformed in good ways. But if what I am ultimately devoted to or paying attention to is not of God, it's treasures on earth, it's not good things, that's going to influence and shape and transform who I am as well. So take care, he says, what you ultimately pay the most attention to. Take care what is the object of your devotion, your worship. Is it going to be an idolatrous thing, a substance or behavior activity outside of God, or is it going to be the things of God? And then he brings it home in verse 24. No one can serve two masters. In other words, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You have to be paying attention to what is it or who is it you actually serve. And the way you understand who it is or what it is you actually serve is by doing an audit of what you are devoted to, what you spend the most time with. You can't serve two. You can't have in the majority of your life an ultimate devotion or attachment or pay the most attention to other things you can get addicted to, and come to church a few times a week and think that is going to balance godly behavior in your favor. It just doesn't work that way. You can only serve two masters. You will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and, he says money, but really the word is more like you can't serve God and any kind of other object of your devotion. It's not, if we limit it to just cash, like I don't care about money. It's more than just cash. So in other words, you may have, and I don't want to pick on anyone, so you can kind of fill in the blank. You may have a thing in your life that you do a lot, that requires a lot of your time. And you really love that thing, and you're engaged in that thing, but also that thing tends to take you away from being engaged at church, or it tends to take your time and your attention away from being a godly kind of person. That becomes a master over your life. And you might end up resenting, well, I got to go to church because of my parents, or I got to show up to church because I'm scheduled to be on the table, or I got to do this because of that. You can become resentful of one of those two things. And it's whatever you are most inclined to do, you're going to be resentful of the other one. So Jesus says, be careful what you pay attention to. It will become your master. All right, so moving from that, let's think about, we're going to focus now specifically on addictions that don't involve chemical substances and what the diagnostic criteria is for understanding what might be the object of your worship. I'm just going to assume right now, no one is addicted to a substance. If you are, let's talk, we'll get you some help. But the focus of the class is specifically on addictions that can become a part of your life that don't involve any kind of chemical substance, drugs, drinking, alcohol, vaping, those kinds of things. We're talking now about behaviors, gambling, food, pornography, exercise has even been classified as a potential addiction, shopping, relationships even. Believe it or not, the desire to be in a relationship has been classified as a behavioral addiction. A person who just can't be alone. They have to always have a person, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it might be. That is an addictive kind of behavior. So how do you know that there's something in your life, a behavioral activity, that might be leaning towards addiction? So here's 6 criteria. The first is importance. How important has it become to your sense of who you are? Okay, so whatever it might be, how important has it become in defining how you feel about yourself, or how you think about who you are and how other people think about who you are? Reward response. When you're doing this behavior or engage in that activity, does it make you feel better? And I should clarify that, does it make you inordinately feel better? That when you're feeling low or down, you're always having to turn to this thing to make you feel better about yourself. Or, in other words, are you dependent upon this activity for a good sense of self and how you feel? Prevalence. Do you find yourself doing this more than you had originally planned? For instance, if you talk to people who are addicted to pornography, they might say something like, well, I was just going to get on and just look at something to get a pick-me-up, and then 4 hours went by, right? Or someone who is into gambling. You know, they'll go to a casino just to kill 30 minutes, and then it's the next day before they know it, right? That's what it means. Do you plan, like, all right, I'm going to do this, and the next thing I know, it's eaten up half my day. Cessation. Are you anxious or uncomfortable if you can't engage in this behavior? If you're going to take a trip and you know on that trip it's not going to be available to you to do you decide not to go on the trip just because you aren't going to be able to engage in it? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel worried? Do you feel uncomfortable if whatever this activity is taken away from you? Does it just give you like sweaty palms? Okay. Disruption. Has it disrupted your relationships, causing conflict? This behavior, this activity, can you or have others pointed to how it has become problematic in your relationships? Like you can't connect to them, or they're always doing this instead of engaging in a meaningful way with the people around them. Reverting. Do you make plans to change, but then you find yourself just getting right back into it? So you decide, all right, I'm going to stay away, I'm not going to do it. And the next thing you know, because it's a compulsion, you're not even thinking about it, you're just like, find yourself engaged in the middle of this activity. Okay, these are the diagnostic criteria based on the National Library of Medicine for addictions that don't involve a chemical substance. Okay, are you ready to find out what specific behavior we're talking about? Phones. Yeah, this is why I didn't tell you before you got in here. We're talking about phones, defining the relationship with your phone. It has become, and a lot of the research, the first time I ever did this series was like in 2017. And it has only gotten worse. It has only gotten worse. Much more literature is available now than it was several years ago. This has become a new category in the DSM, the psychological manual. This has become a huge issue all across the world, because the advancements in what our phones are capable of and what they could do, and the advent of social media grew so fast before we really understood the ramifications of what is happening. There's a reason why our teenagers are in here as well. And let me just say to the teenagers, it is not just you guys. This is as big an issue for adults, even the adults across the hall in the auditorium. The zombie apocalypse, what we think it looks like and what it actually looks like. And I can only find a picture. Sorry, it's only like college students here, but I see this in adults. If you walk into a restaurant, families sitting around the table, what's everybody doing? Everybody's just staring at their phone. Mom, dad, and teenagers, I guarantee if you've ever called your parents out, what do they say? Oh, I need to respond to a text from, there's always a good excuse, right? This is another favorite thing. Have anybody have plans to stare at their phone somewhere exciting this weekend? I really like that because that's you see this all the time. I want to show in the next few weeks that first, let me just say I'm not a Luddite. I'm not someone who's like just totally against technology. But I think this is more serious. I'm not going to provide any good reasons to be on your phone 24/7 because that is already happening. I'm not going to provide any of the good reasons why social media is potentially helpful because I don't need to convince anybody in here that that is the case. I will say, for my own part, I've been off it for a long time. Because I finally realized that the positives of social media no longer outweigh the negatives. The positives of social media no longer outweigh the mental health detriment, not only to young people, but all the way to old. So I want to go through a smartphone compulsion test. It's going to have to happen quickly. But this is developed by the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction. I want you to keep track in your minds what your score is. Okay? What is your score? Number 1, do you find yourself spending more time on your phone than you realize? That all of a sudden you've just been doom scrolling for hours and you didn't know where time went. Do you find yourself mindlessly passing time on a regular basis by staring at your phone? Do you seem to lose track of time when you're on your phone? Do you find yourself spending more time texting, tweeting, or other social media or emailing as opposed to talking people in person? Has the amount of time that you spend on your phone been increasing? Keep track of how many yeses you're giving. Do you wish you could be a little less involved with your phone? Do you sleep with your phone under your pillow or next to your bed on a regular basis? I know some will say, well, that's my alarm clock. It doesn't have to be. Because oftentimes the first thing you do in the morning, right? Do you find yourself viewing, answering texts, tweets, etc., emails at all hours of the day or night, even if it means interrupting other things you're doing? Do you text, email, tweet, Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, etc., while driving or doing other similar activities that require your focused attention and concentration? Or can you not wait until you get to a red light so you can check whatever message came through? I'd like to add that one. Number 10, do you feel your use of your phone decreases your productivity at times? Do you feel reluctant to be without your phone even for a short time? You go to work, then you didn't bring it with you, and you turn around and you go home. Do you feel ill at ease or uncomfortable when you accidentally leave your phone in the car at home and have no service because it's broken? When you eat meals, is your phone often a part of the table place setting? When your phone rings, beeps, or buzzes, do you feel an intense urge to check for texts or tweets or whatever else? Do you find yourself mindlessly checking your phone many times a day, even when you know there is likely nothing new or important to see? All right, what was your score? How many of you only answered yes to maybe 1 or 2? How many of you answered yes to 3 or 4 only? How many of you answered between like 5 and 7? How many of you had 8 or more? All right, you want to hear the bad news? According to their diagnostic criteria, if you answered 8 or more, they suggest you consider seeing someone who specializes in behavioral addiction. And here's something they say too. If you answered 8 or more and immediately begin to rationalize why, you should see someone. Because it's like any addict who will rationalize their addictive behavior. So it comes back, what? It comes back to this. It comes back to this question. What master do you serve? I'll share this with you because I found this to be absolutely stunning. The typical American will spend about 1,400 hours per year. That's 4 hours a day on their phone. I don't know if you're aware of this. I have it on mine where it'll tell me my screen time for the week. How many of you are doing more than 4 hours a day on their phone right now? I'm looking at, yeah. All right. The average American in 2019, all right, check this out. The average American in 2019 was spending 4 hours a day on their phone. That equals 61 24-hour days out of the year. 61 24-hour days out of the year. If you are only spending 3 hours, it is 45 days out of the year. If you're only spending 2 hours a day, that is 30 days out of the year. Now let me ask you this, or let me point this out. If you go to church and go to class and show up on a Sunday night and a Wednesday night, you are only spending 6 days out of the year. What master do you serve? Ouch is right. It's hard for us to claim our master when the most important resource you have, your time, is devoted to something else. All right. We'll stop there. I really hope more than 3 of you come back next week.